Okay, so today we are doing a video that I both love and hate. We're talking about the worst books of the year. These are not books that were released in 2020. These are books that I read in 2020. Some of them are classics. I mean, classics of the genre. And some of them are recent releases. Let's talk about what I hate. I decided to do this list according to how I read it. So the first book of the year that I hated is first in the list, and we work all the way down to recent hatreds. Unfortunately, we're starting with the biggest bombshell of them all. So put your hating hat on, get your hating fingers ready. Let's talk about Dragonflight. I reviewed this book at the beginning of the year, and I didn't like it. Wow, you want to read some angry comments, go check out my Goodreads. Okay, so Dragonflight is a book that I read and didn't love. I was probably gonna give it a 2.5 or a 3, and I was fine with it. It wasn't for me. It's a book that was written, I think, in 1968. It was one of the first sci-fi fantasy books. It was probably the first sci-fi fantasy book like this. It was really a pioneer of this type of story. I think the first woman to win a sci-fi fantasy award. It's really well known. It's really well loved. A lot of people grew up reading it. A lot of people are very defensive over it. I read it for the first time this year, and I kind of felt like, okay, it's cool to see the origins of a story like this. It doesn't hit as hard at this point as an adult reading it, it's more of like, oh, I appreciate it for what it was. But there were certain things that I didn't love about it. There really weren't a lot of stakes in this book. Nothing really went wrong. These characters would be in high stakes situations, but like it would always go off flawlessly and stuff like that. It's not really the type of storytelling that I enjoy. I tend to prefer high stakes situations and, people really getting injured and hurt. And if there's a really big thing happening, I like to feel that tension more than I did in this book. There were a lot of things in this book that I could see, wow, this has been very influential, but it didn't pack as hard of a punch because I'm not reading it at the time where it's influencing. So it's more of an appreciation for what the book is and less of, oh my goodness, I'm on the edge of my seat loving every minute of this. The reason this book went from those feelings to, ooh, I don't like this, is because of the romance in the book. And again, I know it's a different time. Doesn't mean I can't look at it with a critical eye. So, this girl is taken from her home and put in this position of being a dragon rider, and I hated the romance. We'll just say it how it is. The world building centered around this romance situation is ridiculous. So I'm just going to put some text on screen rather than going into it because I don't want to get demonetized again. Those are some scenes pulled from the book, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it. Not only was that a thing, but also just in general, this guy, I didn't like the way he treated her. He yelled at her constantly. He insulted her constantly. He shook her regularly. She was genuinely afraid of him, but it's fine because she falls in love with him in the end. I just didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. This is a subject matter, like I absolutely despise romanticized abuse. I don't know why it's a position I need to take. It's something that I feel should be fine that I say that. But anyway, I hated it. I felt like this was a book that I could see its influence and I could see why people grew up loving it, and I appreciated it for that, but it wasn't working for me and my tastes and my preferences. And then this whole romance thing just like tipped it over the edge, which it's not like it's the biggest part of the book, but it's big enough that it kept coming up and I hated it. So it tipped me over into not liking this book. And sorry. The Eye of the Dragon. So I think this is the first book that no. It's the third King book I read. I thought it was the first one I read after Pet Sematary, which is easily my favorite King book that I've read. So The Eye of the Dragon, as I understand it, the story behind this, I should tell you a little bit about it. No, I'm not going to. It's the most boring book ever. So the story behind this book, I thought I was going to be really nice when doing this video. Apparently I'm wrong. The story of this book is that King was writing horror, and his daughter, I think it was, one of his kids said that they wanted him to write a book that they could read. So he wrote a middle grade fantasy. So, I don't know. I don't know. I don't read a lot of middle grade. I definitely don't read a lot of middle grade fantasy. Maybe this is great. I didn't care for it. I thought that it was very boring. I thought that the narrative style was really cool. The way he chose to tell the story was really fun. It's just that the story itself I didn't care about. Most of the characters were pretty one-dimensional. The general plot line wasn't interesting to me. And if I had to read one more sentence about napkins and their make and the thread count and what they're made out of and why it makes sense that these napkins could be tied into a rope, oh my golly. It just wasn't a story that captured me at all. I did know that it was meant for a younger audience. I don't read a lot of books like this, so maybe it's fine and it's just not my style, but I was not interested in it. The thing that I appreciate about this book most, other than just the narrative style that he chose, the thing that I appreciate about this book the most is the fact that this book had not the fact that this happened to King, but what King did with it. This book had such visceral reactions from his fans of, don't ever write something like this again, get back to horror where you belong, that he wrote Misery about fans coming after an author for writing something that this fan didn't like. Like, it was, oh my goodness, it's such a brilliant, you want to tell me what to do? Fine, here's a horror for you. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. But Eye of the Dragon, read it if you want. There's plenty of people out there that do like it. There's a lot of people out there that don't like it as well. It wasn't for me. Twice in a Blue Moon, Christina Lauren. You're gonna see Christina Lauren on my favorites of the year. This is an author an author duo. It's two friends that write together. Christina Lauren is an author duo that I either love their work or I'm so angry at them for what they've written. Not in like they're not doing something wrong. I hate the way they end some of their books. So Twice in a Blue Moon is about these two people. We have a then and now timeline. We have them as kids when they have like this whirlwind romance on this trip that they're on together. And then we have them as adults when they've lived their life separately and they kind of come back together, and it's their second chance essentially. And I love Christina Lauren's writing style. They have such an addictive writing quality. But sometimes I just don't like the stories they write. And I love the stories they write so often. Anyway, Twice in a Blue Moon. The flashbacks, I guess it wasn't flashbacks. I think it was like the first chunk of the story was them as kids, and then the rest of the story is them as adults. Yeah, I think that's how it went. So them as kids, I really wanted to like them because I love the way Christina Lauren the way they write romances so often. And I wanted to love it. But it happened so fast that it was kind of like I was told that they were in love instead of actually feeling that they were in love. And then when they come together as adults, I hate it so much. These two characters could not communicate. And I know that's a typical trope within romance, but it was so bad in this one. They could not communicate worth anything. They made these gross assumptions about each other based off of the tiniest things, and then would just lose their minds over it. There was so much petty jealousy and just ridiculous nonsense that happened in this book, and it just kept being like, they would have this like really unhealthy chemistry, like bad friction against each other, and then they would just like go be together, have this romantic encounter together. And it's just like, again, it's like I'm supposed to feel that they're in love and they're meant to be together, but I'm never actually seeing them be in love. I'm only seeing them have very bad chemistry and then just like really good physical chemistry and then back to really bad chemistry. And it's like, I don't really know how I'm supposed to root for these people that can't communicate and can't have a healthy conversation and like have all, like they don't work together. They just don't work together. I don't get it. And then the ending too, like, I think this is a trope within the romance genre. I don't read enough romance to really be able to speak on that, but I know it's a trope with Christina Lauren where they have these great, well, usually great build up for relationships, and then they have to do the thing at the end of the book that's like, by the way, here's the big conflict. And with these second chance romances that they write, I read Love in Other Words as well, and they did the same thing, where it's like, okay, here's the secret we've been keeping from you this whole time. This is the thing that happened that's like, it's a little bit too big, Christina Lauren. It's like, especially with this one, you check out my Goodreads review if you want to see spoilers, because I actually go into the thing if you don't want to read the book. But it's too big. It's too much. Like, you have this big explosion of, here's the big conflict, and then you try to stitch the pieces back together in 20, 30 pages, and it's like, we're going to need a lot more unpacking for this to ever work. You know, at the end of this book, my thought was, oh, okay, I get what he did. I get why he did it. It makes sense. So break up. There's no coming back from this. It's over, right? and I just like, I did not root for this romance even a little bit. Love in Other Words it could have been my favorite Christina, I didn't read Love in Other Words this year. I read it last year. It could have been my favorite Christina Lauren book, and they did the same thing to me where it's like, I'm gonna need you to unpack that a little bit more for me to ever be okay with this. But I loved everything up to that moment so much. Their books are just really hit or miss for me. Like, I love so much about what they do, but sometimes they create too much drama for me, and it's like, I'm not gonna just like sweep that one under the rug. You know what I mean? But I don't know. Maybe people love this book. I'm not telling you not to read it. Read what you want. A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes I have a dedicated review for, so I'll link it if you want to check it out. This was just another instance of, I just didn't like it. I don't think it did anything wrong necessarily. I just didn't like it. Well, I do think that the ending was pretty messy, but I just didn't like it. I don't think we really needed this book. It's the backstory on Snow. It's about Snow when he went through the Hunger Games, and it was really cool to see this world in a more archaic state when the Hunger Games was still really fresh and it wasn't formed really well yet, and a lot of things were different, and that was really interesting. I liked that element of it. But Snow's unraveling I didn't like it. How do I talk? My biggest problem with this, I thought that the book was fine. And only fine for the majority of it. And the thing that tipped me over into not liking it was that I just thought that the ending was like so abrupt and messy and convenient. And my biggest complaint, my biggest worry about A Ballad of Song, this title, was that I've read a few villain origin stories. Like Heartless is a really good example of this, where it's like, okay, this character, I could see how they could be tipped over the edge, but they're fine. And then in the end, something happens, they make a decision, and then it's just like, boom, I'm a bad guy. And it's just like, it's not good enough. Like, it's not, I don't like that. And then suddenly I was bad. And it just worked out that I got to be really powerfully bad really easily. I don't like it. Check out my Goodreads review. In the Goodreads review, I give a spoiler why the ending I thought was so messy. That's all. I thought it was fine. I didn't think we needed it, but I thought it was fine. I think that what was supposed to be accomplished with this book could have been accomplished with a novella, or it could have just not been written. And that would have been fine too. But the ending was just like so ridiculous. I bet we get a sequel. I bet we get another one. The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry is another book that I know people love. And I don't want to discourage people from reading this, because I could see why people love it. And, love what you love. It didn't work for me. Okay. I'm trying to decide with A.J. Fikry if I want to go into spoilers or not. No matter what, I'm going to talk about this book in more detail. So skip if you don't want any detail at all. But I'll keep it mostly spoiler-free. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to keep it spoiler-free, but I am going to talk about some specific structural things that I hated. So, if you don't want that information, move along. A.J. Fikry is about a grumpy old man who has a child. He owns a bookshop, and he's not old. Why did I call him old? He comes off as old. Grumpy middle-aged man owns a bookshop, and then a child is left on his doorstep, and suddenly he's a dad. I really loved the first half of this book. I thought it was going to be a favorite. I was recommending it before I finished it. Shouldn't have done that. And I loved it. I wanted to love this book so much. There were certain things that I didn't like this, it's a storied life, but really it's like a rushed summary of AJ Fikry, where it's like, there's a kid on the doorstep, and then we're gonna have a big old time jump. Like, you don't really need to know anything about raising the child or gaining custody of the child or the adoption, which granted, I'm a little bit biased because I'm in the middle of an adoption. I'm currently adopting a child, and I didn't like the way the author was just like, and you know, a year later it happened. And I was like, first of all, no, it didn't in a year. And second of all, just like that easy? It was just like, and then he's a dad. I don't know. Okay, moving forward. There were things like that, like instrumental, important parts of this man's life that were just like, and then it happened a few years later. And I was just like, it was jarring. I didn't like that. I didn't like those time hops. I didn't like skipping of important elements of his life. And not even like a good summary, just like, and we move. So I didn't like that, but it wasn't going to ruin the book for me. What I didn't like is that at the halfway point, the whole tone and focus of the book really shifted. It went from his life with his daughter to focusing on him falling in love, which I just really wasn't that interested in. But I knew that it would come back around to his life, and I was fine with getting through this middle section that didn't really work out for me. But then we got to the twist, and I despised it. I hated it so hard. I hated it for a few reasons. I'm going to keep it spoiler free, but here's, you know, a little bit more information. Is that the big twist, in order to make this work, the author had to jump through such ridiculous hoops of like, this character took this thing and then they couldn't sell it, so they hid it away in the closet for a while, and then this other character who happened to be there saw it one time, but then didn't mention it for a long time until the exact right moment. And then once it was the right moment, then they mentioned it to the other character and they were like, hey, I know you have it. And so then they did the thing, and then that way it could be given back to the man at the exact right time. And it was just like, I'm trying to say it fast, I'm trying to say it vague because I don't want to spoil, but it was the most ridiculous, convoluted, like a million different tiny steps that happened at the exact right time, that people made the exact right decision so that it could all come back at the exact right time. And it was like, it was so ridiculous in order to make this plot point happen. It felt so forced. It didn't feel natural at all. I didn't like it. And then we get to the ending, and it's like, we went through this ridiculous, convoluted thing just so that the book could just abruptly end, so that you could cry. It felt like a cry book. It felt like I'm trying to make you cry. It didn't feel like a natural story. It didn't feel like I was talking to an author about something difficult. It felt like I'm trying to get you to cry. So I did all these ridiculous things so that the perfect thing could happen, so that you could cry at the end. I really hated it. I went into spoilers in the Goodreads review. Again, check it out. I'm not going to be using Goodreads in 2021, so enjoy it while it's there. And finally, the last book on the list, we're going to be talking about Writing into the Dark. This is a nonfiction. It's an author talking about the way that he writes. I was just interested in learning more about discovery writing, so I read his book so that I could learn more about it. And some of the things that he talked about were really good. I enjoyed hearing him talk about, like, you don't have to write chronologically. And, you know, if you're inspired by a scene, write that scene and then just come back to it later, which seems really obvious, but I wasn't doing that. So it was cool. There were like 2 things that I got out of it that I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to implement this into my writing. So stellar. Glad I read it. The problem was just that he wrote with a really condescending tone, which I didn't appreciate tons. It was very much like, okay, my writing style isn't the only writing style. Do what you want. He would say that, and then he would say things like, an English professor couldn't write a good book if you held a flower to their head. They're only teaching because they can't actually write. And what were some of the other things that he said? Oh, he said, if you're gonna give up on this process and bail on discovery writing before you finished the book, and start outlining even a little bit, go ahead and write your sad book, see how that works out for you, or something like that. Like, he would just write, he would say, here's my tips, do what you want, but if you do what you want, it's gonna suck. It was like the weirdest tone of just like pure condescension, insulting everyone around him. I don't mean like his tone is insulting. I mean, he actually legitimately insults people that do things differently than him. And I just didn't like it. I thought it was annoying to read. I thought that some of his tips were things that I'll absolutely not do. Like I'm not gonna not read through the book after I've written it to make sure that it's all consistent and well-paced. I'm going to do what you want, but I'm not going to do that, right? But that's fine. I don't have to agree with everything that he says. Some of his advice was actually solid and I appreciated it, but just the tone throughout the book, I was like, man, you're a jerk. And I didn't like it. I didn't appreciate it. But it was also pretty short, so, you know, whatever, I got something out of it, so I guess it was worth reading. I just didn't like it. So there you go. Those are the worst books of the year for me. You may disagree, but I enjoyed hating these books, I guess. Not really. I would love to chat with you more about these books in the comments. Have you read them? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What were some of the worst books that you read this year? I will have my favorite books of the year video out next week. I post videos every Tuesday through Friday. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.